Did you know that happiness doesn't come when you curl up in your comfort zone waiting for the universe to pat you on the back? That's a fantasy. True happiness begins when you decide to leave everything that drags you down. Excuses, fear of change, absurd comparisons. Stoic philosophy was clear. Inner peace is achieved when you let go of what weighs you down. When you stop looking for validation in thee and you focus on what really matters to you, you are ready to leave behind what prevents you from moving forward. Because if you keep holding on to everything that limits you, you are going to get stuck in an endless cycle. It is time to make a change, to choose what really matters. You are willing to do it, or you are going to continue to let life pass you by. Then pay attention to this video, and I will teach you the 10 things you have to put aside to be really happy. So don't miss the last one, because you will be speechless. But before you start, listen to this story that will help you better understand the wisdom that this material contains. A young guy called Adrian used to carry a rucksack with him wherever he went in a beautiful valley that was encircled by mountains. It was no ordinary rucksack. Stones of various shapes and hues were stored inside. He added a stone whenever anything troubled or scared him. If he recalled a mistake committed by another smaller stone, a giant stone was placed in the knapsack for verbal abuse. But equally heavy, he added to the rest. Over time, Adrian's backpack became so heavy that he could hardly walk. Even so, it never occurred to him emptying it. These stones are, he said, they belong to me, I can't just leave them. But in his heart he knew that the burden was wearing him down. One morning while walking in the woods, he found an old woman picking flowers by the river. The woman greeted him with a smile and asked him why you carry such a heavy backpack. Adrian sighed and told him his story. The old woman listened patiently and then said, "Come with me." I guided him to the riverbank and asked him to take off his backpack. With effort, Adrian deposited it on the ground. The old woman gave him a small stone and told him, "This represents the mistake you made years ago and that you are still reviving now. Throw the stone into the river." Adrian hesitated, but in the end, he did. The stone disappeared under the water with a gentle splash. "You feel how the river drags it?" he asked the old woman. "You can't get her back, and you don't need to. That mistake is no longer in your hands." Adrian nodded. Little by little, the old woman encouraged him to empty his entire backpack, stone by stone. Each throw relieved him a little more. When he finished, Adrian felt as if he could fly. He looked at the old woman and asked her, "How can I avoid filling my backpack again?" She smiled and replied, "Remember this, there are things you must leave to be happy, to relive mistakes, to carry the words of others of. Look for hidden meanings where there are none. Life flows like this river. If you let the water take away what you don't need, you will always feel light." Adrian returned to the valley without his backpack. Since then, every time something disturbed him, he visited the river and let it flow. Over time, he learned that happiness was not a load to carry, but a space to create. Letting go of what doesn't matter. The moral of this story is that to be happy, you don't need to add more things to your life. You need to let go of the ones that weigh you down. Just as Adrian left his stones in the river, you can also let go of your burdens and walk lighter towards happiness. Before starting with the first lesson, if you find these videos useful, I encourage you to subscribe and activate the icons to stay informed about the latest news. We start one. Stop seeking the approval of others. Have you ever stopped to think about how many times you have done something just because you wanted others to applaud you? Well, if it sounds familiar, you are not the only one. Living to please everyone is like trying to dance on a tightrope while you load yourself with worries. But here is the great truth. The constant search for the approval of others is the perfect recipe for stress, anxiety, and worst of all, unhappiness. When you become obsessed with what others think of you, you enter an endless cycle. You dress in a certain way because you think it is what they expect of you. You do things that don't really matter to you, just to be told how well you did, and when finally you get that pat on the back, you feel good, right? But only for a little while, because in the end you realize that you did it for someone else, not for yourself, and that feeling of emptiness invades you. The funny thing is that even when you do everything you can to like you, it's likely that there is someone who doesn't like you, and that frustrates you because all that effort, all that energy invested in to please goes to waste. You know what happens next? More stress, more pressure. You can't win, friend. Here comes the hard part. Stop seeking the approval of others is not something that happens overnight. It's more like trying to stop eating chocolate in the middle of a movie. It seems simple, but in reality it is not so simple. The Stoics, for example, were clear about it. The only approval what you should seek is your own. They understood that things that are out of your control, such as the opinions of others, should not be a source of stress. Why? Because the opinions of others do not define who you really are. Stop expecting others to constantly validate you. The validation that really matters is the one that comes from yourself. How to start changing this habit? First, you need to know yourself better. Ask yourself what really matters to you, not what others think should make you happy. It's essential to identify what fills you and moves you once you're clear about it. Instead of living up to the expectations of others around you, begin living in accordance with those ideals. If you have something to say it. If you don't feel like doing anything, don't say it out loud. Then, be honest with yourself. You have to be respectful, but don't convert in a robot that only exists to please. You don't have to be a puppet moved by other people's opinions. An essential part of this process is to let go of the fear of rejection. Accept that you won't like everyone, and that's okay. It's impossible to please everyone no matter how hard you try. Even the most incredible people have detractors. The important thing is that you accept yourself just as you are and don't depend on others to feel valid. Finally, remember that the most important thing is to do things for yourself, not for others. If what you do fills you and makes you feel good, that is the only validation you need. The world will move, people will look at you, but in the end it will be you who lives with their decisions, not them. In the end, living looking for the approval of others is like running in circles chasing a carrot that you're never going to reach it. So why not try something different? Live for yourself. If what you do is genuine and makes you feel good, that's the only validation you need. Stop being a slave to other people's opinions and be the owner of your own life. As Epictetus said, stop waiting for others to approve of you and start being the first to approve yourself. 2. Don't live in the past. Is funny how our mind insists on juggling memories, as if we had a collection of painful moments in a display case ready to be observed over and over again. Those emotional scars, those mistakes we made, or those wounds that never healed, seem to define us. But you know what? You don't live in a museum. You don't need an exhibition of what the past already was. It's like that catchy song that you can't get out of your head even if you hate it. You relive the same scenes, the same words, those little awkward moments that you wish you could erase, as if you could go back in time and do things differently. But let's be honest, who hasn't been stuck there? The worst of all is that this kind of nostalgia doesn't get you anywhere. You keep living in a scenario that no longer exists. Imagine you're on a train, and even though the train is gone, you still stay at the station, staring at the empty platform where you're going to get to. So you're stuck in what wasn't, in what has no solution. Like the Stoics taught us, the past is like sand in your veins. No matter how hard you squeeze it, it slips out, leaving your hand empty in the process. So how the past is let go, how to stop being a prisoner of what no longer exists. The key is to recognize that the only thing you have is the now, but not in a mystical or philosophical way that sounds nice. No, I'm not talking about being aware that at this moment the past has no power over you. If you decide that it doesn't, it's as if you were carrying a backpack full of stones that only they weigh you down, and at some point you realize that it is you who has chosen to wear it. And best of all, is that you can let go of it at any time. The first step is to forgive yourself. Yes, that mistake you made is not just a stumble, not a condemnation. Forgive yourself, because clinging to guilt is like keeping a coat heavy in the middle of summer. Makes no sense. Then you have to learn to let go what you can't change. Accept that there are things that can't be turned back. The Stoic philosophy, for example, invites us to focus our energy on what we can control, not on what is out of our reach. You become obsessed with the mistakes of the past, because it's time to turn that obsession around. If you can no longer do anything about it, why do you keep thinking about it? Being happy doesn't have to do with having a perfect life or without mistakes, but with knowing how to live in spite of them. Happiness is in what you decide to let go. Life is a series of moments, not a repetition of what has already happened. So why not do your well-being a favor and let go of all that keeps you anchored to the past? The true freedom is in letting go of what binds you, in ceasing to live in a constant reconstruction of what already was. Peace comes when you decide that you don't need to continue carrying the weight of those moments that in the end only existed in your head. In the end, you realize that living in the past is just a kind of self-deception. The present, with all it has to offer you, is just waiting. Stop looking at it through a glass fogged by the traces of yesterday. So the next time you find yourself trapped in a mental repetition about something you can no longer change, remember, you don't live in a museum. What happened happened. You don't need to carry the mistakes or the wounds that no longer have a place in your current life. In the end, to be happy is to see, let go, to stop living in the past and simply living in the present. As Seneca said, happiness is not in what you didn't do, but in what you choose. Let go of 3. Stop comparing yourself with others. Have you ever stopped to think about how much time you spend a day looking at yourself in the mirror of others? That constant need to measure your life, your achievements, your failures with those of others. How boring. No, imagine yes, instead of wasting energy comparing yourself, you'll spend that time looking in your own mirror, appreciating your path as unique as you are. It doesn't sound any better. The first thing you need to know is that comparing your life to that of others is like if you were to take a map from another and try to walk on theirs. You're not on their path. You don't have their same landmarks, their same challenges, not even their own dreams. Everyone carries a different backpack. The Stoics, those ancient sages, already knew it. Inner peace doesn't come from what others do, but from how you manage your own thoughts and emotions. It's easy to fall into the trap. We all have social networks, and that's where everyone seems to have the perfect life. But you've stopped to think about how many photos are hidden behind filters. Forced smiles and carefully chosen moments. Comparing yourself with what you see on the networks is like believing that a chapter is the whole story. You sell yourself the lie that there is something you need to be happy, something that others already have. But the truth is that happiness is in who you already are, in the way you walk your own path. Now, I'm not saying that you can't be inspired by others or learning from them. That's something totally different. But the key is not to measure your value based on what others have or achieve, as if your value were a competition. You're playing a game that you've never agreed to play, and worst of all, you don't even have the rules. If you want to be happy, you have to stop looking at the path of others and start appreciating yours. The first step, it is accepting that your path is unique, and that is something that no matter how hard others try, they cannot live for you. You have to learn to recognize your achievements, even those small ones that sometimes seem invisible. In the end, what matters is not to arrive first, but how you enjoy the journey. Do this. Spend a few minutes each day to be grateful for what you have and to value your own steps. Set goals that you will have make you feel good, not make you look like the person in the picture. It's about being the best version of yourself, not about following someone else. You are your own mirror, and if you don't like yourself, then who else will? If you want to be happy, you must stop constantly comparing yourself, because if you do, you will be letting your happiness depend on something outside of yourself, something that you already know is out of your control. The Stoics were clear that the important thing is not what happens, but how we respond to it. Therefore, why not begin today to view yourself as a special, valuable being? And in constant evolution, the only mirror you need is the one you have in front of you. As they say out there, true freedom does not come when you free yourself from what others think of you, but when you stop comparing yourself with them. 4. Leave perfectionism. You knew that wanting to be perfect, it's like trying to make your car run on gasoline and chocolate. Sounds absurd, right? Because that's what you do when you insist on perfection. Perfectionism not only robs you of joy, but also puts you in a kind of endless race in which you never reach the goal. Because the reason that goal does not exist, happiness, my friend, does not live in perfection, but in accepted imperfection. Did you know that even the Stoics spoke of the importance of accepting what we cannot control? Well, imagine that not controlling includes your need to be perfect is going to free you. If you've ever looked at your life hoping that everything will fit together like a head with no missing pieces, congratulations. You're human. We all fall into that trap, believing that only if everything goes according to plan will we be happy. But what happens when the puzzle has no pieces? Frustration, anxiety, and a feeling of not being enough are the results, because what they tell you, it's that life is not a perfect movie. It's a chaos full of incomplete moments. The good news is that happiness is found in those holes, in those imperfections. The Stoic philosopher Seneca, for example, said that life is not about waiting for the storm to pass, but about learning to dance in the rain, and boy, is it a great lesson. Here they are not asking you to be perfect, but that you learn to dance with what you have, to accept that not everything is going to go as you planned, and that it is okay. First, stop waiting for the perfect moment to do something. You are going to wait for everything to be in order before taking the next step. Then goodbye, because that moment will never come. And if you think that the world is watching you, waiting for you to be the 1A model of perfection, believe me, he is much more busy in his own dramas. So why do you keep torturing yourself? The key is to embrace imperfection. When you stop demanding a perfect version of yourself, you begin to discover that being yourself, with your mistakes and failures, is what really makes you unique. You have to stop comparing yourself with others, because the perfection of others is just an illusion built on a mountain of invisible sacrifices. You can Start applying this philosophy to your day-to-day every time you notice a perfectionist thought appearing. Take a deep breath and remind yourself that life is more like a blank canvas than a final exam. Each mistake is a brushstroke that together forms the masterpiece of your life. It is not a matter of perfection but of expression. So how about you stop being so yourself? You are not a robot. You don't need to be perfect. Happiness is hidden in those moments when you allow yourself to be human. Accept yourself, learn from your imperfections, and above all relax. Life is not made to be controlled, but to be lived. When you let go of perfectionism, you will discover that the journey is much more interesting than the destination. Remember what the Stoics said: we do not control everything, but yes, how do we respond? Let go of that obsession with being perfect and start enjoying who you are today. Because seriously, perfection is not going to make you happy. It is only going to tire you out. As Carl Jung said, in imperfection lies true freedom. Not being perfect is the key to being happy. 5. Stop repetitive thoughts. Sometimes you get stuck in your head, right? As if your mind were a record scratched, repeating over and over again the same thought, that same doubt, that same worry that you don't even know where it comes from. I'm telling you clearly, your mind needs a break. It's as if a coach is asking you to run a marathon non-stop, but instead of training is demanding more and more from you until you end up exhausted, and the only thing left for you is to look at the horizon looking for some peace. The trick is to stop those repetitive thoughts. Stop feeding that monster that only exhausts you. Have you ever tried to stop thinking about something, and the only thing you can do is think about it more? It's like a vicious circle, like you're sinking into a deep hole while you struggle to get out. Every time you think you freed yourself from that worry, there it is again, waiting to catch you. And you know what? This is not only tiring, it is also unnecessary. Your mind does not need to be constantly busy turning over all the mental noise. It only serves to cloud your judgment, diminish your ability to enjoy the present, and most importantly, exhaust your energy. The Stoic philosophy, that ancestral wisdom that still has much to teach us, reminds us of something fundamental. We cannot control everything that goes through our head, but we can decide how we react faced with those thoughts. The Stoics spoke of discipline of the mind, a way of observing our thoughts without letting them dominate us, as if we were spectators instead of protagonists of each one of them. If you learn to watch them pass without getting hooked on them, then you will have won a crucial battle. If you keep feeding the repetitive thoughts, you will be trapped in an infinite loop. It is as if you tried to do a puzzle without having all the pieces. But don't worry, there are ways to turn off that mental noise. The first step is to recognize that you are giving yourself a mental beating. Admitting it is the most important thing, because only then can you start doing something with it. Then it's time to do something to get out of that cycle. If your mind doesn't stop spinning around the same topic, try to change the focus. A little trick is to distract yourself with something simple, something that will help you force you to focus, like reading a book or going for a walk, is like giving your brain a change of perspective, a breather that disconnects it from the circuit of thoughts that exhaust you. Another technique that can help you is to breathe deeply. This may seem simple, but conscious breathing has amazing power. If you focus on your breath and take a moment to relax your body, you will notice how that mental noise gradually goes away. Deep breathing helps calm your nervous system and allows you to focus on the here and now, leaving behind that whirlwind of thoughts that consume you. It is also helpful to write down what you are doing. If such ideas are about things you can't alter now, what can you control? This is a key lesson from Stoic philosophy. Concentrate on what you can control and let go of what you can't. It's a method of clearing your mind and keeping it from being overflowing with pointless thoughts. You'll realize that it's much easier to find clarity. Finally, meditation. Although not if you need to be an expert, it can be an excellent resource. You don't need to spend hours in silence, but a few minutes a day are enough to calm your mind and observe your thoughts without getting stuck in them. Meditation helps you to let go of that need to control everything that goes through your head and to find that space of peace. Living in a sea of repetitive thoughts is not only exhausting, it is unnecessary. Your mind, that your body needs rest and space to breathe. The key is to learn to recognize those moments when you get stuck in your own thoughts and take control. It's not easy, but with practice it can be achieved. Remember, you are not your thoughts, you are just the observer. So give your mind a break and free yourself from unnecessary noise. As Gandhi said, my friend, the mind that will calm down is the mind that will find peace. 6. Stop fearing yourself. Have you ever stopped to think that the biggest obstacle in your life is not that mountain of problems you think you have, but yourself? Because let's be honest, often the worst enemy you can have is your own mind, and of course, it is much easier to blame the universe, fate, or the neighbor who gives you a strange look, but the truth is that it's often you who gets in your own way. You move through life as if you're about to stumble into an invisible trap that only you can see. Insecurity consumes you, fear paralyzes you, and you end up believing that the person looking at you in the mirror is less capable than you really are. It's time for that to end. The Stoic philosophy, those ancient sages who probably never imagined that they would influence your life in such a direct way, they already warned us about this. They told us that if you control yourself, if you overcome your own fears and insecurities, you really have the power to transform your life. But of course, it is not as easy as reading a few nice words in a book and waiting for everything to change. You have to do serious work, and that work begins by recognizing that the only person who can really stop you is yourself. What surprise do you think for a moment about what you let go, just because you're afraid to try? In those moments when you say, "I can't," before you even try, that's what's stopping you, and there's no external force that's holding you back other than your own doubts. Why not try? What's the worst thing that could happen? Answer. It's simple: fail. But failing is not the same as being a failure. In fact, the Stoics would say that failure is just an opportunity to learn, not a sign that you're not good enough. Then how do you overcome that insecurity? The key is to face it head on, like a bull in a bull ring. Insecurity, like an angry bull, only has power over you as long as you keep running. Yes, you stop running away and you stay to look the bull in the face. Fear will be in your face. It's not curious how many times our mind is our worst enemy, because it's not failure that scares us, but what we imagine failure means. But what if we change that perspective, and if failure is not the end of the world, but one more step towards success? Of course, to do this, you need to be honest with yourself. You need to stop fearing yourself, your own thoughts and fears. No one else is telling you that you can't. It's you who is limiting yourself. Stop looking for approval from others, because at the end of the day, the only one who has to live up to your expectations is yourself. You imagine what you would do if you stopped doubting so much. It would probably change everything. So the next one, once you look in the mirror and ask yourself if you're capable. Remember, you're stronger than you think. Insecurity only holds you back because you allow it. You have the power to embrace your true potential, and all you need to do is stop fearing yourself. Do it now, because as the Stoic old sage said, what you fear the most is on the other side of fear. Burn down what you want. It is up to you, my buddy, to determine what you are capable of doing. 7. Stop being afraid of yourself. Set aside your resentment. We seem inquisitive, don't you think? It's very hard for us to let go of what hurts us. We cling to the grudge as if it were some kind of medal that shows that we were hurt. But let's be honest, all that you keep in your chest only ends up being more weight for your soul. Is like carrying a backpack full of stones that instead of helping you only sinks you more and more. But what if I told you that you can let go of those stones, that resentment really has nothing to do with the other person, but only with you? Let's see if you dare to. Leave it first. Let's start with the obvious. Resentment doesn't change anyone. You think that the person who hurt you, she's going to become a better person because you keep holding on to what she did. I'm sorry, but no. Neither she nor he are suffering from your anger. The only one who is living it in his mind over and over again is you. And let me tell you something. Your heart is not a garbage dump. It doesn't make sense that you keep accumulating things that hurt you, because the only thing you achieve is to stay trapped in a cycle of negativity. Now, forgiveness, and don't get me wrong, doesn't mean that you stop seeing what they did wrong. It doesn't mean that everything is okay or that you forget. Forgive because you need it. Forgive because you deserve to live in peace, not in war. When you hold on to a grudge, what you're really doing is giving that person a space in your life, a space that, by the way, no one paid you for like that. Why continue to allow someone who has already hurt you to continue gaining ground in your mind? Is not helping you at all. The Stoic philosophy tells us something very clear. What does not depend on you, you cannot control it. You cannot control the actions of others, but you can control how you receive them. You can choose if you want to keep that poison inside you or if you prefer to free yourself from it. Yes, it's not going to be easy, nothing worthwhile is, but every time you let go of a little of that emotional weight, you get closer to the peace you seek so much. There is a metaphor that I like very much. Imagine that you have a plant at home. If you keep pouring water on it, but you don't let it breathe, the plant chokes with resentment. The same thing happens if you keep giving space and time to those negative emotions. You will only manage to drown yourself. On the other hand, if you let go of that control and decide to breathe, little by little you will feel lighter. It is a clear process, as if you were watering a plant that is recovering life. But the important thing is that you start. So what can you do? I am going to give you a couple of ideas. First, allow the negative emotions to go away when they come. Third, stop carrying the weight of the past. The past is the past, and the only thing you can do now is choose how you are going to live today. Don't let resentment control your heart. First, acknowledge the resentment and then let it go. Second, write down all the things that would free you when you forgive. Finally, consider how many opportunities for peace you are missing by carrying the burden of something that no longer serves. As Nelson Mandela argued, make room for what truly matters, your inner peace, and let go of things that no longer serve you because you are the only one who wins. 8. Learn to prioritize, and let's face it, your habit of saying yes to everything they ask of you is either making you happy or you are just piling up tasks, commitments, and, worse, frustrations. Let's not fool ourselves. Yes is like a candy that seems sweet, but in the end it fills you with emotional stiffness, and while you go through life eating candies, you forget that you also have your own path to travel. However, it also makes you an expert at not following your own instructions. It's like a vehicle that starts and stops repeatedly to please other people, never getting to its goal. The core idea of the Stoic philosophy is that we shouldn't let our wants and feelings guide our choices. According to the Stoics, we have the ability to decide what we let into our life and, more importantly, what we don't. What if you begin establishing boundaries guilt-free? Doesn't it seem revolutionary? Really, however, it's not. You just need to quit feeling bad about acting in your own best interests. Consider your life to be a home. You want people to be allowed to come in and leave their filthy garments in your living room without asking permission. Obviously not. If your time is precious, then why do you allow those individuals to disrespectfully take up your time and energy? Why just throw it out without giving it any thought? When you accept everything, you are committing to one of the quickest ways to lose yourself. You are putting other people's acceptance ahead of your own needs and desires. Being accountable for your own needs and learning to prioritize does not imply selfishness. Well-being. Whether you like it or not, you can't perform at your best if you're hollow within. To be content, you must learn to say no firmly, without having to justify yourself endlessly, and without feeling like you're falling short. If you think of your life as a garden, weeds will grow out of control and suffocate your flowers if you don't create boundaries. It may appear difficult at first, but he is not like the gardener who picks out those weeds. But the garden will eventually bloom much better. I promise you that when you start saying no and setting boundaries, you'll be amazed at how much you can accomplish without the constant emotional burden of satisfying everyone. Now you may be afraid of disappointing others. I understand you. But here comes another trick. People who really value you respect your space and your limits. Sometimes the fear of no is just the fear of confrontation, but in reality saying no is not a confrontation, is an affirmation of your right to be at peace. Saying yes to everything only makes you a yes machine that will never have time to live. Instead of being a slave to other people's commitments, choose to set healthy boundaries and prioritize what makes you happy. You don't have to be everyone's superhero. Don't forget, in the end, the only person you will spend the rest of your life with is you. So why not start taking care of yourself right now? Remember, the constant yes doesn't get you anywhere. If there is no room for you on the way, prioritize yourself and you will see how everything fits. As Brian says, Trace, if you don't set limits, others will do it for you. 9. Stop making excuses. We all have dreams, some big, others more modest, but dreams, after all. Maybe you want to be a writer, have an athlete's body, or just achieve the peace of mind that sometimes seems so elusive. However, there's something that always holds you back. The excuses, those little lies you tell yourself, those justifications that seem so convincing in the moment, but are really just a fancy way to avoid doing what you really should. Your dreams won't come true if you keep making excuses. Excuses are like that toxic friend who constantly tells you that everything is fine, even though you know it's difficult to fall into them. Excuses like, I don't have time, I will, and tomorrow, I'm not ready, and the situation is not ideal are just ways of hiding reality from yourself. The only thing holding you back is you. Yes, the well-known lie about not having time is a lie. We all have 24 hours a day. What's really missing is priority, not time. If you truly wanted to accomplish your goals, you would have taken some action, even if it was just a small step. The Stoics teach us a fundamental lesson. Life is not what you want. It is easy to blame circumstances, others, or even the universe for your lack of success, but the truth is that you are the only one responsible for your goals. If you do not move forward, it is because you are not willing to do what is necessary to move forward. Who else can take responsibility for your life if you are not yourself? Of course, this implies stopping blaming your parents to your boss, your neighbor, the rain, or anything else you can think of. Only you are in control, and that is the greatest power you can have. Think of your dreams as if they were a plant. If you don't water it, you don't take care of it, you don't put it in the sun, no matter how much you want it to grow, it won't, and the same goes for your goals. It's not enough to want them to come true. You have to work for them. Take action and be consistent. You can't wait for the universe or the aligned stars to give you everything you want without lifting a finger. The responsibility is yours. If you really want to leave the excuses and move towards your dreams, start with small steps. A change of mentality is essential. Make a list of what really matters and start there. Dedicate time every day to what really brings you closer to your goals, and no, it's not worth making excuses to procrastinate. Progress is not always visible at the beginning, but every day that you take responsibility, you are closer to that dream. The Stoics knew that the secret to happiness is not in perfection but in constant action towards what we consider valuable. Advancing with determination does not mean running at full speed, but knowing that each step is one step closer to where you want to be. It's time to stop making excuses, to stop blaming everything around you and start taking responsibility for your dreams. If you want your goals to come true, you have to act, and remember, there is no guaranteed tomorrow. Every moment counts, so take the first step. You have no excuse not to do it. You have everything you need inside you to achieve what you set out to do. You just have to start believing it. No matter how much it hurts, my friend. Time doesn't wait for anyone, and excuses only feed failure. 10. Leave the fear of change. You know that fear that paralyzes you every time the possibility of something new appears, the one that tells you that you better stay in your comfort zone. Even if it's full of dust, and that fear of change that seems to have more power than your own desire to move forward, you're not the only one. It's a fear as old as humanity itself, but guess it's time to leave it behind. Life, dear friend, it's movement, and if you think you can escape that truth, well, you're wrong. Life doesn't wait until you're ready. It doesn't stop so you feel comfortable. It moves flow, move forward, and if you stand still, it's going to leave you behind without asking. The fear of change is like that heavy backpack you put on without realizing it, loaded with and yes, but what happens? Yes, and if I fail, and the longer you wear it, the heavier it becomes, until you don't even realize that you're in a cycle of indecision and paralysis. The first thing you need to understand is that the fear of change is not something you can eliminate with a stroke of the pen, but you can learn to manage it. The Stoics, for example, teach us to accept uncertainty as part of the journey, not as an obstacle. Why? Because fear arises from the unknown, but the unknown is also the cradle of new opportunities. If you stand still, what are you going to find? Exactly the same as always. But if you dare to move the chip, even if it's just a small step, the panorama changes. And yes, it may not be perfect, but something is certain: it will be different now. Accepting change doesn't mean jumping into the void without further ado. No, it's not about being reckless. It's more of an act of silent courage. It's like learning to swim. You're not going to jump into a pool full of crocodiles, but you can start with a dip in a calm pool. The point here is that the fear of change, it's like a wall that only comes down when you face it, not when you avoid it. The key is to change your perspective. Instead of seeing change as a threat, look at it as an opportunity. Every new challenge is an open door to new experiences. You may not know exactly what's behind it, but that's the exciting thing. You imagine living all the time. What would happen to your life if it were to float in your head? How dull that would be. According to the Stoics, we have no influence over what occurs, but we do have power over how we react to it. So why not react to life's changes with interest rather than fear? Take baby steps at first. You don't need to take a drastic change, but you must begin making choices that push you just a little. Take up a new pastime, alter your daily schedule, or simply just shift your perspective. Never undervalue the impact of a little adjustment. It has the same ripple effect as a stone tossed into water. The dread of change, no matter how little, is only a tale you tell yourself. It's time to stop hearing it and begin creating a new one. If you don't dare to move, then what are you really doing? Let fear serve as a reminder that there is something new to discover and not an insurmountable obstacle. Change is not your enemy. Rather, it is the door to everything you haven't experienced yet. As a wise Stoic proverb goes, the one who does not risk change risks staying stuck in the same place. Yes, you have come this far. Please write in the comments, activate notifications, and leave a comment so that YouTube knows that these videos are helpful to people like you. This encourages us to continue producing similar content in the future. I encourage you to watch the last 2 videos we recommend. Thank you for your time and support, and I hope to see you on our next adventure.